Thank you for joining me for part 2 of the Canvas Learning Mastery Gradebook. Today's video is going to dive into the technology piece and show you how to set up this tool and end with some considerations for how to get your students to use it as an effective tool as well. So the first thing you need to do when you go to Canvas is simply click on one of your courses that you would like to use the Learning Mastery Gradebook with. And what you're going to do is then click Settings. And once you're here at Settings, you're going to click on Navigation. And navigation allows you to decide which tabs over here students get to see and which ones only you get to work with, and they are not visible to students. So anything on this bottom half is not visible to students. You just want to make sure that this Outcome tab is at the top. So if it's down here, go ahead and drag it up and then click Save here at the bottom. After you've done that, then click on Feature Options. And the first two options you see here are Learning Mastery Gradebook and Student Learning Mastery Gradebook. Yours will be toggled off. Go ahead and toggle them on so they have the green check mark. And I believe it will save automatically. So something to note is that you can use your own Learning Mastery Gradebook and keep the student gradebook off if you want to play around with this before students have the chance to take a look at it. And once you're ready for it to be visible for students, you can then come back here in Settings and turn that on. In my experience, I've found that students don't tend to click around unless I tell them to do so. So even having this Outcome tab here, if you're still going to be working with it, it's a work in progress. If you want to keep that hidden on your navigation panel, I understand. Just be sure to enable it once you're ready for students to access it. But at the same time, I feel that they don't typically click around too much. So now what we want to do is just make sure it worked. So you can go ahead and click on Grades. And on the top left, you should have this button that says Gradebook. And when you click on it, you should now have an option for Learning Mastery. So this is how you will always access your Mastery Gradebook from the normal traditional gradebook. Go ahead and click that. You should not have any data because you have not yet used it. If you had data, you could click on any student's name on the left and see that individual report, or hover at your standards to see the data, etc. If you are in the Learning Mastery Gradebook and you wish to get back to the traditional one, it is on the top right where you click and now hit Gradebook. So on this side, it's on the top left, and in the other view, it's on the top right. The next step is to return to your normal course home page, and now we are going to play around with that Outcomes button. So go ahead and click on that. And the first thing you want to do is reference your list of categories that you've already made and click on plus group, and you're just going to name the group. So this is where I would type in reading or writing or whatever my category is. And then I would hit save, and I would create all my groups at this time. So whatever your categories are, just go ahead and keep hitting the plus group here until you've got them all. So once you have your folders created, you're going to click on that particular category, and now you're going to click plus outcome. So this is how you enter each individual outcome, and I just like to name it something that gives me the essence of what the outcome is. So for instance, I put conventions here as my title, or figurative language, whatever it is that I am assessing. And just note that if you choose to put something in this friendly name box, that is what is going to appear when the students look at their gradebook, not whatever you put here. So I just kind of opted not to even use this box at all. What you're going to do here in this blank box is put the description of the actual standard. So what I recommend is that you go to the actual standard website. So I've actually copied in the link from the standard website, and so when I click on it, it actually takes me directly to that page. And so once you've copied in the standard terminology right here, then what you need to do is create your rubric. So what I had to do is actually insert 2 extra categories and edit every single one of these boxes. So I have to manually type in distinguished and then set my score level. Competent, it remembers it because I've entered this before many times. And then developing, and that was a 2. And then next I was using the term a novice. And then okay, and then my last category. Okay, and this part can of course seem a little bit repetitive because you do have to unfortunately enter that rubric for every single standard in order for this whole thing to work correctly. So once you've entered that, then you get to choose however you want to determine mastery. So if you want to do highest score, mastery at a 3 or mastery at a 4, and that is why, because you have to set the number here, why this system requires point values there. And then once you are done with that particular standard, hit save, and then you can continue up here to just hit add outcome until you have them all in there. Another option is if you want to just add a couple that you're going to be using right from the beginning of the school year, and then just continue to add them as you go. That's another viable option if you don't want to front load everything now. So the exciting news is that after you have finished entering all of these outcomes, you are then ready to use them. So what we're going to do next is go into our assignments tab, and you are going to create an assignment just like normal. So I might come in here and I might create a new assignment called test, whatever I want it to be, and then I'm going to click on more options. So here you're going to name it as normal, you're going to select your point value, category, etc., all as normal, and then you are going to hit the save and publish button. I don't want to alarm my students that there is a new assignment right now, so I'm just going to hit save and not publish it. And notice that after you hit save, you then have this icon here for plus rubric. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to delete this template that they auto-generate for us because you don't need that. And instead, we're going to click on Find Outcome. And notice when I do that, all of my categories that I've set up are right here for me to choose from. So let's say they are doing an explanatory essay. I want to evaluate their formal tone. So I'm going to go ahead and import this standard into my actual rubric. So now you can see that it has appeared here, and I can continue clicking on Find Outcome. All right, so in addition to formal tone, I'm going to evaluate their topic sentences. So I will click Import. That row has been added to my assignment rubric, and maybe I'm also looking at their transitions. Import. And once you have your rubric all set, I recommend coming here and clicking on this option that says remove points from rubric. So you can see when I go back and forth here that initially it has these numerical values that I did enter in the outcomes tab, but when I click remove points from rubric, they all go away. So what happens then when I use this rubric to assess an assignment, when I go to that student's individual grade report, or when the student goes there, they see this terminology. So they see, oh, for formal tone, I am distinguished, as opposed to if you keep the numbers on there, it will focus more on you have a 4. And so what we're trying to do here with this mastery mindset is shift students' mindset from thinking about a different numerical value of, oh, I need to get a 4, I need to get a 4, because the numbers can be so arbitrary. Instead, we want them thinking, oh, I'm competent, I'm trying to move to distinguished. And that's our true focus here. So I recommend removing points from rubric, and then you can name the rubric whatever you want and click on Create Rubric. And something that I also want to point out is that when you remove these points from the rubric, it's also going to affect your own teacher mastery gradebook. And let me show you exactly what I mean. So if I click on my grades and go into my learning mastery gradebook, you'll actually see this in practice. So before I knew I could remove the points, I started assessing students by leaving those point values on the rubrics. And so this is how it populated my actual gradebook. And once I took them away, it then started using Canvas terminology. So unfortunately, I do not have the ability to modify these terms myself. This is actually set by the person at your school who controls essentially all of Canvas. They have an admin tab, and that's probably the person who does your report cards. So we can't edit this, and that might be a consideration that you just want to use this terminology. It's up to you though, because the students don't really see this too much. So if you use different terms, there shouldn't be a conflict of interest there. So what we're going to do now that we have created the rubric for the assignment is we are going to actually grade that assignment in Canvas. So if you're familiar with SpeedGrader, that's the tool that we're going to use. And to get there, you're going to click on the Grades tab, and you want to make sure that you are in the actual traditional view. So I'm going to flip back here to my traditional gradebook. And this is an assignment that I know already has a rubric. So you're going to click on this button here next to the first student in your roster and click on SpeedGrader. And SpeedGrader is a fantastic tool because you can have students submit work through Google Docs. And so you can actually grade it right here and have full Google Doc functionality. You can make comments, etc. And then here there will be a tab that says View Rubric. And I can go ahead and evaluate the student right here while grading their paper. And then all I do is hit Save. And now that data has been collected for the student. And so it's this data that is then going to appear when you go into your Mastery Gradebook and when that student goes in. So you should now be able to go ahead and see those data points for that student in your Canvas Gradebook. That is essentially the overview for how to set up all of the technology pieces in Canvas to use the Mastery component. What I recommend next is thinking about how you're going to introduce this to your students.